Said before, I'm Julie Nerhaig, and this is Chiwa Tan we have here today, and we are happy to have her to introduce her new book, Journey, Once Upon a Journey, Book One. And it's a unique type of book because it really tries to connect story, sound, emotion with the music to help our students connect more with their musical side. Chiwa is a well-known composer for and has written works for elementary through advanced levels. And she is originally from Malaysia, but is now a US citizen. And she has master's degrees in piano performance and pedagogy from Southern Methodist University and a bachelor's in piano performance in English from Oral Roberts University. So we are very happy to have her as part of the Piano Safari composer guest composer list. And I am going to share my screen now so that, sorry, just have to pull this up. There we go. Too many buttons. Okay, let me try that again. There we go. So on pianosafari.com, you can see her other books. So she has the elementary collection Circus Sonatinas Through the Window Pane and A Child's Garden of Verses, some of which are featured in the Federation list and the Royal Conservatory repertoire books. And then also the intermediate, we have her newest collection, which we'll talk about today, Once Upon a Journey, but also Windy Nights and Other Tales and a Royal Birthday Celebration. So if you haven't seen these books, we hope that you'll check them out at pianosafari.com. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over the rest of our time to Chiwa.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Julie and Katie, for being such wonderful editors and publishers. It is sheer joy collaborating with you both. A little bit about my background. I was raised in Malaysia, a beautiful country in Southeast Asia that is a multicultural melting pot for different ethnicities, beliefs, sounds, sights, flavors, and scents. As a little girl studying piano, I recall falling in love with how I could express my emotion through the colors and sounds of the instrument. It was my thing. Music, like books, freed me to explore the world of the imagination and story. Since then, I have taught for more than 40 years with my private studio, as well as at different institutions like SMU and Oberlin, and most recently, University of Denver Lamont School of Music. But I think that the most defining work that I have done was to raise 4 children for 25 years, and they're amazing young adults now, and just leaving the home. And just to see that they could be music makers, that they could, as adults, still love music. They are avid music makers. I did teach them all piano, which I don't necessarily recommend for everybody. Only one of them went all the way through with me, and I had the privilege of preparing her for her piano, to test out piano, actually, at Eastman School of Music. But they are cellists and violinists, and they would make music together. But anyway, I say all this to say that watching that process as a parent really tests what you believe. Like, how much do I really believe in the importance of music for everyone? And this idea of how important it is to connect emotion to story, to sound, has been percolating in my mind and heart for several years. As a parent, as an educator, as a musician myself. Have you ever noticed how a piece of art, whether it's visual or music, theater, or dance, how it can provoke an emotional response? Sometimes, a lot of times positive, sometimes negative in us. Emotion is what makes us human. It's what attracts us to a good story, be it a movie, a book, a poem, or a song. And emotion is what connects me to music making and makes me come back to it. And yet, have you also noticed how we tend to be so focused on the mechanics of the tasks at hand that emotions tend to be relegated to a secondary shelf? Because of this, it can be challenging for us, as well as our students, to define or identify our emotions in daily life. Whether we like it or not, The truth of the matter is that emotion is always present, whether we embrace it, acknowledge it, deny it, or suppress it. In my own life, I have to confess that I have found that learning to practice the habit of being aware of my feelings and being able to identify what they're trying to tell me makes me more able to appreciate beauty and to move into a posture of wonder and awe, which is where I find is my healthiest place. When we play or teach a piece of music, I propose to you that we participate as co-creators in that work of art. It is vital as artists at the piano that we first identify the emotions and imagery that resonate with us in the music. Then and only then do we decide on the sound, which is gesture and touch, which we call technique, required to communicate the message of the art. Today, I am inviting you to join me, to take courage and join me on a journey of exploring emotions through the power of story and sound. The activities we are going to do together are drawn from the pages of Once Upon a Journey, Book 1, and Julie showed you that book. And I was thinking how I could do this so it got to the heart of why I wrote this music, beyond just having pretty pieces. I would like to share ideas and approaches for how I use this with my students and how you can use it with your students beyond just playing the pieces. The first slide you see here is a unique part of Once Upon a Journey, and I thought you might like to see, it is in the book, it's a guide, it's the inclusion of your journey pages for the teacher, musician, and adult hobbyist. To get the most out of this session, please have at hand a sheet of paper and pencil, and some crayons, color pencils, markers, maybe even stickers if you don't have any of the above. Just experiment. I invite you to experiment with me to maximize our time together. I really encourage people to begin with these pages first before going to the score. Now, when you put something into a book form, you have the logistics of organizing score and words, and that's tricky. So what you will see is a score first. But really, what I do is I do the your journey pages on just in my activities with all my students, even before I had a book. This is culled from that. And this will enhance your learning process and personalize how to communicate the underlying emotion, story, and sound behind each piece. I did spend time for the first time ever in the recording studio creating audio recordings so that they could be included in this book expressly for this purpose. Now, there are 3 different resources for my music. You have really high quality audio recordings that are included in a link in the title page. And you have video performances that are available on the Safari website as well as on my website, which I need to update. And there are albums you saw at the beginning. There are those beautiful albums in the SuperScore app where there's an interactive score that follows my playing of the music. And it's kind of fun for the student to hear and follow how the composer interprets it. And maybe they will come up with an even more beautiful interpretation. Now, I chose the theme of journey because we are each on a journey. And we all have unique stories to tell. The words "once upon a time" invites us into that story. Today, I invite you to journey with me to experiment with experiencing learning music in a different way. Our third slide is the one rule you have to remember if you're going to do this with me. There is absolutely no right way of doing this, which means there is therefore no wrong way or expected way. I would beg of you to take off our expert hats. Let's take off our expert hats. What is the expert hat? It's the voice that says, I should know this. I expect myself to be able to do this. I could have, would have, should have. And the beginner hat is the one that says, I wonder what will happen if I try this. It's curious. Let me see. So let's do that, and then we can experiment together. Now, if you are listening to this and you are driving, please don't do any of this. Or if you're cooking, something like that. So let's begin our journey with your journey, the first piece titled Awaking. Now, I would like you to reflect upon the big mountains in the cover art. Each of the pieces in this collection has a different emotional palette, which was inspired by a Chinese brush painting by my mother, who is an artist. And the original painting is actually still on its rolled up in its rice paper scroll, because that's how you do Chinese brush painting. And she's got tons of them. And it's about 3.5 feet tall. And I just thought this would be a wonderful way. I happen to love this painting. And as you reflect upon it, ask yourself, how does looking at it make you feel? You are welcome to type in your responses into the chat box to share with each other. So I'm going to give you a little time to reflect upon this. For me, this artwork represents perspective, starting from the beginning and up to the mountains. And I thought it really aptly represented this image of journey, the journey that we're in our music, in our lives, in our teaching, in our relationships. I would like to ask you, let's stand up and take some slow steps. Just stand up a little bit so you can move your body. And since I cannot see myself, let me see. If I'm in the camera, I'll turn off this. There you go. See that. So take some slow steps or sway and move your body where you're at. I would like you to take a deep inhale for 5 counts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now hold it for 2 counts. 2, 1. Slowly exhale for 7 to 9 counts. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now close your eyes to fully listen and imagine and maintain that same breathing pattern. Inhale for 5 counts. Hold it for 2. And slow exhale for 7 to 9. Before you listen to the music, I would like you to breathe and reflect on the following questions. What emotions, impressions, or word pictures come to your mind as you listen to the music? What is the first thing you see in the morning? How do you usually feel about the coming day? What words come to mind? I'm now going to share a recording of the music with you. Please keep breathing and moving or walking as you listen and reflect. At the end, keep your eyes closed and give yourself time to still sit in that feeling you had during the music. And Julie, you can share it. As you keep inhaling and exhaling, you may now open your eyes. Our next slide we're going to explore is the listen and journal sections of Awaking. So let's notice how I am doing these exploration activities first before going to the score. And that is intentional, because when we go to the score, we start engaging a little differently, a different part of the brain. On the screen, you can see the listen and journal sections from the book. Can you take 1 to 2 minutes to write down your responses to these questions? You can do it in the chat box, or if it's personal, do it on a piece of paper. And I see, thank you for those of you that shared what your impressions of the painting were. All I want to go and explore. So beautiful. And there was another beautiful one that I just saw, and it's vanished.
Yes, that's because I responded to it because it was so.
You did. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Blue water especially makes me feel drawn in. I'm rewarded more the closer I look because the colors are subtle and look more beautiful with focus on them. Thought that was a nice image.
Beautiful, just really beautiful. So what emotions, impressions, or word pictures came to your mind? Write that down. What is the first thing you see in the morning? How do you usually feel about the coming day? And you can be honest. Write down the words that come to mind. And if you're willing, I'd love it for you to share it with us. It's a little different doing this on a webinar where I'm speaking into, it just seems like I'm speaking into dark space. But I really wanted to try this. Now let's move on to the create portion, which is the next slide for the piece Awaking. What you have to do, you get to choose one of the following activities as preparation to learn the music. Your first option is to use words. So you create a haiku out of your words from the journal section. So what you just wrote down, you can use that as inspiration for a poem. Now, your traditional haiku is 17 syllables and it's 5-7-5. But the modern haiku is actually rather limitless. You can have as little as 11 or 10 syllables. 10 is pretty tricky. I tried doing it myself. Or 3-5-3, or you can do a free-form poem. So there is no rule about this. And again, it would be wonderful if you're willing to share it in the chat box if it's something that is shareable. Your second option is to use your pencil or crayons or collage. I have used self-adhesive colored shapes like the triangles, hearts, squares that just colored and with stickers, because some people don't like doing the detail. And so you can just, it's representative of symbols. To put down some shapes, colors, or images that you hear or feel. And remember, there is no right way to do this. And your third option is that you get to create expressive movement or gestures to the music. And this is in a way, it's the simplest one. And while you do this, I'm going to play Awaking for you one more time. And while you create a poem, a visual, or a movement, and you have the length of the music for this, so find a spot where you can express yourself in words or visuals, or find a spot where you can close your eyes and feel the music in your body, unless you're driving.
Gee, well, we had someone, Lily, write a really wonderful little haiku. I'm not sure if it's floating cloud petal, serene, layers of mountain height, cross hands, tree, lovely shade of singing melodies. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh my goodness. That is so beautiful. We should collect all these
Oh, thank,
as inspiration.
thank you for sharing that, Lily.
Lily, thank you. Now, and you can keep sharing. I realize that that wasn't a lot of time, but it's okay to be incomplete, to continue it later. And even I'm just doing this so that you get an experience of what it is like. Um, my friend Kathy, Kathleen Cuppet, who created the poem, the haiku. She created haikus for each of these pieces, but you need to know that she did it exactly the same way that you did it. I sent her the recordings really rough on GarageBand. She listened to it and she created what she heard. And I did have the titles. So it's just a model. It's not meant to be descriptive of the way you hear it. I think it's just very important for us to have our own voice in this. Now, the next slide is your journey page, and you get to see now what the whole page looks like. I gave you excerpts earlier, and at the beginning, I start with my composer insights. So that's at the top, and I'm going to share. Now that you have shared a little bit, and I see Rebecca shared a little bit, and Jonathan did, and Chiming, thank you so much. It's just lovely. This is a different format. But when I was thinking about this, I was watching, I would wake up between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. and I live in Colorado Springs, and I would look out the window. And sometimes this is between 5 to 6 a.m. as well, depending on the time of the year. Early in the morning when it's still pitch dark, I love to watch how the rising light of the dawn on the mountains slowly and steadily transforms what you can see with your physical eyes. It begins as a dark, formidable shape and gives way to faint shades of green that emerge with each splotch of light. And this is really what I see. In the music, I use long drawn out half note values at the end of each phrase to represent the sunbeams. Finally, over a period of an hour, you see Pikes Peak Mountain, that's America's mountain. In all its beautiful glory, shades of purple, pink, and green show up in the morning light. Now, what I find most interesting is how this dark, intimidating mass of mountain from 6 a.m. had all these characteristics hidden. It was the same mountain from an hour ago, but I could not see its beauty until the light touched its face. So in our next slide, we will move to the final section, which is the final preparatory step. And these are all practice steps to learning the piece. They are just as valid as teaching the physical technique of doing a two-note slur or a staccato or an accent. So, but it precedes, I do believe it precedes that. Connecting story to sound, and you have a bit of the score as well. Here you deal with the tonality. Now, if you notice, I chose the key of B major. Now, why on earth would I do that? We don't have a lot of pieces in B major in the first 4 years of piano, maybe not even the first 5 years, but yet Chopin uses them. And actually, B major is the scale that Chopin started with, and the position he considered the perfect hand position is based off of the B major scale. And I chose that challenge because I get a lot of transfer students, especially transfer advanced students. And I find that we struggle with pulling in and out with advanced music, especially when it's fast, which is an issue, right? It's extraneous motion. So B major makes you keep your thumb and fifth finger in the doorways of the black keys. With my students, you know, it's so understandable that we would play out here because after all the early music in the first 3 years is, you know, everything you can make do playing that one black key and still have your hand out. And I tell my students that the black keys are the best seats in the house. And I have them actually do this just gently to kind of retrain that brain, because I think that when you have only played pieces in D, A, F major, even E major, you can still pull it out. Our brain goes into kind of a fight or flight mode when your teacher tells you, play a little deeper. So this is my piece to meet that need, which is a lot of times how I come about to write my pieces. Now let's go on to with the score, there is also tenuto touch. I addressed tenuto touch. This is my tenuto touch piece. Now tenuto, the full definition is to hold for full value. So tenuto is, I want to point out, that is actually a length or time touch. It's not really an accent or pressure touch. And when you play tenuto, you feel as if you're leaning into the key on notes with a tenuto so that they sing out like touches of sunbeams on the longer note values. And I hope this piece that you can hear that. The other thing is, I wanted a piece, and this is about early intermediate, but the musical concepts in here are a little more complex, so it crosses over into intermediate, and it would be really suitable for an advanced student to go to something like this, to explore if they always have this rounded hand shape, which is a classical hand shape, to experiment with the flatter pads of the fingers to create different tonal colors and feelings with a more romantic hand shape. Now, our next slide is a sample of a handout. I did make a handout for this when I did a presentation for workshop at the new school, and it's technical and musical concepts that convey character and emotion in each piece. So what I did was I took each piece and I went through and listed every touch, technique, and gesture. So because precision with touches communicates a particular character or mood. So can you see how emotion, story, and sound being technique, are all wrapped, intertwined. Now let's move on to our next piece, skipping stones. In our next slide, I will share composer insights about skipping stones. And you can see now, this is the page, the full page. I'm going to just let you kind of wander around and look at it. Have you ever skipped stones on the water? I have never been too successful. What does it feel like when yours just go splat like mine do? What does it feel like when you finally get them to skim a little? I was thinking about what it feels like to try something new outside your comfort zone. How it takes some daring, some risk, and in some cases, some vulnerability. I created this piece to sound like a beginner trying and experimenting. Then in the middle, they get a little success and they begin to figure out the spin. They keep trying, building confidence, and suddenly have an exhilarating breakthrough at the end. As you listen and imagine, notice how you feel in your body and what emotions, impressions, or word pictures come to your mind as you listen to the music. And think about this. How do you feel when you try something new? What if you can't do it at first? How do you feel once you reach your goal? So let's go to the create section, and I am going to ask you to be brave, have courage, and try something different with me. Let's try movement. I would like you to get up if you can, And pretend you are a pebble. I just would like to see, let me see, we'll see. Yes, pretend you are a pebble or stone that is being skipped. Get up and use your whole body, or you can stay seated and just use a part of your body, like your shoulders or your hands. Giving you some examples, but be my guest, try. I'm sure you'll come up with a lot of better ideas. So Julie's gonna play the super score video for skipping stones. We're gonna, and now that you know what it sounds like, experiment with your body. Remember, there is no right way, okay? Thank you. How many of you tried that? Come on, I want to know, I'm curious. Anyone tried it? Or did you just sit and watch? No shame, no shame, no shame. That's okay. Let's move on to slide 14, and that's connecting story to sound. And I gave you a little bit of the score excerpt. And now the tonality is the key of A minor. And I always start with the tonality because the tonality backs up your feelings. I mean, it's intentional. The two-note slur gesture is an important part of the imagery. So listen for the more or less releases and imagine what is happening here. So what other touches paint the sound story of skipping stones over the water? You have staccatos, forzando, 3 and 4 note slurs, and legato phrases. Can you make each touch and gesture sound different? What story do these touches tell? What happens at the end? Now, in my opinion, this is not an easy piece. It is pattern-wise, it's not terribly challenging, but the touches, being able to make the story of those touches will save you. If you can begin to experiment with that here, how much easier is it going to be when you get to the Bach, the Bach suites and all the dances of the Baroque, and I mean, really, even with Chopin and later, to have those different, to have begun to explore those touches in your toolbox. So let us move on to the piece, A Place to Dream. And the next slide is an art image that is in the book. And as I read, as I share the composer insights for this, could you reflect upon the art image? When I sit by a stream or lake, I feel that the water carries my cares away, refreshing my heart and mind. In her haiku, the poet was imagining the water cycle, how raindrops form tiny pools that eventually become streams and rivers, a metaphor for our hopes and dreams. This piece is about pausing, resting, leaning into the moments to process our emotions and thoughts. Now, I first started with 4/4 common time meter, but felt like I was somehow rushing by and missing the beauty of the moments. The alternation of 4/4 with 5/4 meter changes the feeling to one of stretching time, allowing me to breathe. Often in classical music, we need to learn how to listen through the beat and not shortchange any of it. Beat 4 and 5 of the measures with 5/4 meter are an opportunity, a gift, to rest and enjoy the moment. So I'm going to let you look at the score now for A Place to Dream. Learning to breathe through the phrase is an important secret to communicate the imagery of this piece. As I play, I feel the way the phrases expand and contract by physically taking a deep breath. Inhale before the start of the piece. And then I do a slow exhale through the start of each phrase. Now you will sound and feel better with oxygen to the brain. How often do we tell our students, breathe, breathe? And I thought with this piece, when I saw how it really needed that extra beat, I thought, wow, I could actually create an experiment. And there are many different ways, there's several different ways you could breathe through this. But this is my suggestion, and you can try it. If it doesn't work for you, adjust. But what I would suggest is count off 2 measures. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and then on 3, 4, and 5, or on 4 or 5, inhale, 4, 5. Now exhale as you start the piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Inhale, 4, 5. Exhale. Did you try? Could just try that. Okay, look, you have the score in front of you and you can experiment. So I am going to go ahead and play this for you. And I'll play it as much as I can, and because of time. And I would like you to listen and breathe. Now let me set my tempo first, and I will cue you in if you want to try the way I suggested or try it some other way. So how about 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Inhale, 4, 5. Inhale, exhale. And so on and so forth. How did that breathing work for you? I'll be interested to hear. If you look, that's the haiku for the piece. And let's move on to connecting the story, which is the next slide. I want to have enough time for us to have a little discussion at the end if you want. So connecting story to sound, the tonality is the key of G major, and it transitions to D major. The change of tonality represents how taking time to rest and reflect brings us to a new place in our journey. The image of water is pictured in the falling broken intervals in the right hand. And this can be a bonus opportunity to listen to voicing in the hidden melody. That would be a more advanced technique. So let's move on to dancing in the rain. That's the next slide. And I'm going to flip the approach. I'm trying to do this different ways just to show you there is no one way, but to make it experiential. Now, I don't usually go to the score first, but with you being all musicians here, take a look at Dancing in the Rain and see if you can look at the score and identify the feeling and character of this piece. Can you imagine what it might be just from the notation? From looking at the score, can you guess what type of character and emotions this piece portrays? Type in your responses. skipping quality. Let me see if I can find any. Oh, I see that some people are buoyancy, exploration. I love it. Oh, someone really did the inhaling worked. It really does help slow things down. It helps shape that phrase. I'm just looking at the chat box, sorry. Distracted. Now we have two chat boxes going on, Julie. That's the chat and the question and answer. So let's listen to the Super Score video created by our good friend George Litterst for Dancing in the Rain. And this is available in the App Store at Time Warp Technologies, and it gives you an opportunity to listen as well as play along with the score with me. So. And what I was thinking was, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. If life gives you rain and your plans are all scattered, might as well dance in it. Just my 2 cents. So, so now next slide. Finally, we come to the final piece, which is coming home. And I am going to share my insights on it. And why don't we look at the artwork that, it's all the same artwork. It's from the cover. And out of that cover, I just focused on one thing, which is what we just to be present, which I think could be kind of like our teaching. It could be an analogy for that. So I think we all long for a sense of home, a familiar space, safe space where we can just be ourselves. Home means different things to different people, and it can change with each season of our life. My family moved a lot when I was growing up, and home changed each time. When I went to college, I traveled halfway around the world to places that were foreign to what I knew as home. For this piece, I wanted something beautifully lyrical and perhaps wistful, because often it takes a journey to get home. Sometimes a friendship can feel like home. Listening to a familiar song, a favorite meal, a memory, a scent, a flavor, or just sitting on a favorite couch with our dog. And I'm going to end with, I'll just play an excerpt of Coming Home for you. And then we can go into questions and answers. Thank you for listening. And we can have a time of question and answers and discussions with Julie's help in the remaining time.
Yes, if you have questions, now the chat is working, so you can write them either in the chat or the Q&A. Chiwa, I remember when you first played the draft of Coming Home, I felt to myself, that sounds exactly like Coming Home. It really did sound like what it was.
Thank you.
Love
Thank
that
you.
one.
That means a lot. Yes.
Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask about teaching this book or any of the pieces in it?
Ah, they like the dissonance. I love dissonance.
Here's a question. What did you call the sample video of the score with the moving green bar? So that's the Super Score app. You can find it on iPad at the App Store. And then it has a way for you, when you download the app, to purchase different volumes of all different kinds of composers. So there's a lot of Piano Safari stuff, and also many other composers have works on there. So it allows the student to see the video as they're playing, and sometimes there's backing tracks. You could slow and speed up the music and make the music bigger or smaller. So there's a lot of good ways to use SuperScore with students.
And I think it's very helpful if you do online, primarily online lessons. You both can be looking at the same score, because sharing score, is very useful when you're teaching online. I still do some of that. And George had a question about the album. Yes, that's a good question. So True Confessions, I actually composed this with the adult, older student in mind, because they need more at this level for the artistry so that they feel like an artist. They develop that artistry so they can use it for music, for all kinds of music later. And of course, it includes the younger pre-college students too. But I wanted something that would be appealing to adults in the sound, and it is a little more musically complex.
Jonathan asked, are the exploration activities done during the lesson or by the student at home?
Very important question. They are done in the lesson, and what I do is, and obviously I just created this book, so I haven't been doing this book, but I've been doing things like this, and I realized, so what I would do is I would take each section, like the listening and the journal could be one prep step 2 weeks before the lesson, 2 lessons before. And it would take you just 5 minutes, seriously. You just play the audio. You don't even have to play it. You could do it with them. And then, or you combine. So you could do each section, and then the create could be another the week before. And then you could do the create and they could finish the create at home. They start it with you. I did this actually with my group of high schoolers, and it worked really well. It was actually on Zoom. I have a group class on Zoom because I have students that are from all over, and they did do this, and we shared online, and it was just, they heard, all of a sudden they heard all these things, and they were actually things I was trying to reinforce in that lesson. And this is this book, not the Beethoven sonatas. Hope that answers that question. Just take each section as a possible prep practice step, and you can combine them based on your time.
Teresa commented that this would be a wonderful resource for summer lessons or summer camp. I think that's a great idea. That would work really well in a summer camp format.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had another question from Claire about, do the elementary books have a similar format?
No, they do not. This is the culmination of years of growth, personal growth in my own life. What I realized as I've been percolating about this for literally 5, 6, 7 years. It's been in my head, but I couldn't quite figure out the format. But I kept thinking, we need something. We're always trying to get them play with more emotion in a masterclass setting. Someone asks them, what is the imagery? And they stare, with a glazed look. And you really can't just suddenly know how you're feeling about a piece just like that. And so I was thinking how all my other books, like Charles Garner Verses, I always had this principle. I always had this goal that the sound would create an emotion. But in this one, I flipped it. in creating it, I will be transparent. I started with an emotion, and then and I thought, well, what patterns would create this emotion? Now, I don't think it really matters which way you do it, because in my child's grammar verse, they say still creating emotion. And if you use these same steps, starting with that, the student will be that much more motivated to get the technique, don't you think?
Mhm.
Because isn't that the problem? To get especially someone younger or even someone older to really be picky about that technique. Why? Because I say so? Or because that creates an emotion in them that makes them hooked?
Also, you're planning books 2 and 3, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
More
Working
to
on it
come.
right now if I weren't doing this webinar. Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, it looks like that was most of the questions.
Hi,
So,
Christine. Hi, Leela. It's so good to see all of you here. I love how everyone used the chat. So you all did use the chat. Did you all do movement? Yes, it looks like people did movement, didn't they? Some?
yeah, it took me a while to figure out how to enable the chat, but then.
Ah, I see. So no one had an accident doing the movement? Yes,
Okay, well, thank you all for coming to our webinar today, and we will post a replay if you'd like to see it again. And we thank Chiwa so much for coming and for writing these beautiful pieces. And I hope we will see you again at a future webinar. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.